This is All India Radio. Under the Azadi ka Amrit Mahotsav series of Spotlight program, now we bring you a discussion on Indian foreign policy charting a new course. The participants are Anil Kumar Trigunayat, former diplomat, and Simran Sodhi, journalist.
Today we are discussing India's foreign policy as we celebrate 75 years of India's independence. We have also seen Indian foreign policy evolve over the years, and especially in the last 10 years or so, we have seen a foreign policy which is much more aggressive and an effective foreign policy which has shifted New Delhi away from its old strategy of strict non-alignment, and this has paved the way for stronger ties with great and middle-sized powers globally. Ambassador Trugniat, if you take a quick look at how the Indian foreign policy has evolved, especially in the last 10 years, what would your quick analysis be?
Well, I think that in the last 10 years, definitely the foreign policy has become far more robust, resilient, and result-oriented. That is essentially the difference, because today we have relationships with nearly all the countries. At the same time, we are continuing to maintain our principled stand in the international affairs or on the international issues. India has taken several leads, and you mentioned about the time of independence, we had no choice but to remain non-aligned and to fight for the cause of the world. Basically, the countries and the people who were subjugated to colonialism. So India took the lead at that time when it was very weak. It needed assistance from all sides in order to strengthen its industrial development, economic development, and fight poverty, hunger, and other things. So the challenges have remained even now, but millions and millions of people have come out of poverty. India's stance in the global affairs has increased significantly. But then there is always, you have to shift gears in the foreign policy, even if the car remains the same, or for that matter, your road remains the same. But definitely the style, the contact, the personal connect that Prime Minister Modi, especially in the last 10 years, has brought about is extremely important for in this very complicated times, especially when the world is going through a major churn and we see there are global challenges that are confronting everyone. So at this time, India has shown the path of peace and development and leadership, whether it is in the International Solar Alliance, whether it is Coalition for Disaster Resilience, vaccine diplomacy, and then we can talk about there are so many other things that have happened.
Mr. Trugniat, one of the major shifts that we see in these last 10-15 years has been the strategic shift from a very close relationship with Russia, which we still maintain, to a relationship with the United States. And India today has also the strong Indo-Pacific strategy. This is an effort to contain China, of course. But do you feel that this strategic shift which we have seen of late, while on one hand India is maintaining its ties with Russia, which is an old traditional friend, India has also moved forward and embraced this strategic relationship with the United States. And we see this relationship also gaining strength almost every year that we observe the foreign policy.
Yeah, I mean, this is precisely when I said that it is fundamental tenets remain. That means we want friendship with everyone. And the world has also moved along quite a bit. There are now 192 countries in the United Nations compared to 50, 60 that used to be there at the time. But India even led from the front even in the times when we were significantly weaker. But today what has happened is that to wade through these complicated geopolitical scenario requires a very adept handling, which the Indian leadership has been able to do. So what you mentioned about Indo-Pacific, because China at that time was not such a big threat, even though I think Pandit Nehru's biggest regret was misunderstanding China, and we suffered a great deal in 1962. But that happened to be an eye-opening for India. And subsequently, you can see India was very decisive in various wars that ensued and were inflicted upon us. But at the same time, the Indo-Pacific now today, China's rise is rather malign in a way, if one can say that. I use that word because it is hegemonistic. It is aggressing into the various territories, and we have the dispute with them now, the Galwan incident and others. They keep on happening, and the China remains somewhat defiant to the global architecture and the global system. So this will remain our major challenge. Even though India does not, as Prime Minister Modi said at the Shangri-La dialogue, does not believe in containment of China, would rather see an inclusive Indo-Pacific. in which there is a free and open. So this is going to be a new theater of competition. Relationship with Russia remains strong despite the fact that Russia may have weakened significantly, but our interdependencies have increased, and India takes a position from a principled perspective. As far as even the Russia-Ukraine war is concerned, it was not really much to do with what is our economic or defense engagement with the countries. It is for peace. But at the same time, with the United States, we have grown from strength to strength in our relationship without falling into the trap of this alliance architecture.
Master Trungnath, as you pointed about China, and this we have seen and we've discussed this before, that one sees a very aggressive rise of China, which is alarming for the world order as it is. Do you feel that of late the groupings that we have had, for example, the Quad which has come, and you have other groupings, now we have the West Asia Quad. Do you feel that groupings like this also give India an additional global voice to talk about its concerns, whether it is regarding China or it is regarding other issues?
Well, of course, you have to have partners in order to contend any malignant growth. Because in order to even exert pressure on China, you need partners who think like you and democracies. So that's the reason the Quad has come into being. It is not a security partnership in that sense of the term, even though its name is Quadrilateral Security Arrangement or whatever. But at the same time, let us see that how do you communicate with China and how do you confront China and how do you convince China to essentially follow the international order. The problem with the superpowers is, whether it's United States, China or Russia, is that they prefer to take a unilateral path. And that unilateralism causes a major challenge for a country like India, which in its own right is a regional power and aiming to become a global power, at least through its soft power diplomacy. And so what we are seeing is that India has to protect itself, defend itself, grow simultaneously. But at the same time, it has to be a part of various multilateral architectures. You mentioned Quad, there's the BRICS, in which we are part with Russia and China. There is Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Again, Russia and China are there and several regional powers. Then we have RIC, Russia, India, China. All these organizations are going strong. What does it say? It says that India believes that it can work with several countries in our region and it can continue to serve its national interest in that perspective. And that's what I said, that Prime Minister Modi and Dr. S. Jaishankar, and before that, the late Srimati Sushma Swaraj, I think they have done an amazing job in this, like India's Neighborhood First policy, India's Act West policy. You mentioned about the West Asian Quad, I2, U2 as it is called now. Now that is a kind of a change that is taking place in the Middle East. There are new equations that are emerging.
Mr. Trungnath, one relationship, the India-Israel relationship, which we have seen, it's really changed the nature of the relationship in the last 10, 15 years. We've seen an open embrace of Israel, which we didn't see for a very long time. Would you say that this has been one of the important changes that we have seen in the Indian foreign policy in the last 10 years or so?
In 1992, when we had full recognition and diplomatic ties with Israel, at that time I was dealing with that desk. And we had taken that step. And now when I see the relationship between India and Israel growing, it's definitely 25, 27 years have been a great success. Success is we have become strategic partners, we are technology partners, and Israel has excelled itself. But India has not hesitated to talk about the Palestinian issue. It has continued to propagate the two-state solution and dialogue between the two sides, and efforts are being made in that direction. India continues to provide a lot of assistance to the Palestinians. At the same time, we have de-hyphenated that policy. So that's definitely a change. That our relationship with Israel stands on its own, and our relationship with Palestine stands on its own. And this has been accepted by both Israel and the Palestinians. Likewise, we continue to maintain our relationship with Iran. At the same time, we have great relationship with Saudi Arabia, with other GCC countries and the UAE. So there are two reasons for this. One is the kind of personalized diplomacy in which Prime Minister Modi has really engaged. And I admire that because he is able to communicate with the leaders at the personal level. And that's precisely what has happened. And that has given you the kind of heft which we did not have earlier vis-a-vis Pakistan. Today, when Balakot happens or Article 370 happens, these countries recognize that these are India's right positions that have taken. This did not happen before. So there is definitely a great change in this regard. Even on the multilateral front, climate change, solar alliance, and other initiatives, And top it all is our vaccine diplomacy, vaccine mastery as it is called during the pandemic. I mean, there's the biggest challenge, and India provided capacity building assistance. That is what makes India different from the rest of the world.
Ambassador Tribhunath, as you pointed out about the vaccine diplomacy, and do you feel that something like the vaccine diplomacy, which India was at the helm, India stood out to help the world when the pandemic was at its worst? Do you feel that today gives India a global stature, which we didn't find for many years? And today, rightfully, we find India being in a global position and most of the global countries also accepting that fact.
Well, yeah, I mean, as far as India is fortunately being one of the most ancient civilizations, has a tremendous heritage, cultural heritage, and a lot of things to tell the world. So when we talk of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, means world in one's family, means we rise to the occasion. We are not using them as simple words. And this is precisely during the pandemic time India did when it provided medical assistance to 150 countries, then vaccines as soon as possible. And India manufactured its own vaccine and manufactured for many other countries, including United Kingdom and Russia. So this has definitely given a great start. And it is also seen in the behavior of the world towards India. Because you know the Yoga Day, now it has become a routine for us. But when it was done, there were 177 countries in the United Nations, which is the highest ever, if I remember correctly, supported that. So that shows that you have arrived in that sense and people look at you. And today you are not hesitant to talk about your status or the kind of what you are looking for yourself, whether it's a Vishwaguru, means we're not militarily. There are countries that are getting militarily powerful or something. So we want economic power, we want military power, hard power, and we also want to excel in the soft power for the larger good of the world.
Ambassador Tribhunath, one of the relationships that we have also seen change of late is with Pakistan. And as many analysts point out that this is after 2019, after Pakistan-based terrorist group attacked the erstwhile state of J&K, India retaliated. But the good part is that the escalation didn't go up despite the fact that India retaliated. Do you feel that the Pakistan relationship is something that India has handled more aggressively and in a much stronger fashion than we did for many years before that?
Every time we have tried significantly to work with Pakistan, India has always taken a step because at the end of the day, your neighbors are, so to say, a gift of geography. You have to live with them. You have to grow with them. We always believed that an economically stronger neighborhood is absolutely necessary for India's own growth story. And Pakistan included in that. But Pakistan has chosen a different path. The path of promoting terrorism against India, indulging in all kinds of destabilizing activities, and has a zero-sum policy as far as India is concerned. So we have to behave accordingly. And you know what happened in 26/11, and then we have the various attacks on different places, Pulwama and whatnot. But what has changed? Change is that we are going to respond to these kind of terror activities across the LOC, which was not there earlier. Even if it was there, it was in a very subdued manner. But today they know it, that response from Indian side would be sound and definitive. And that's what the change in the policy is.
Mr. Tribhunath, if you were to say that 1, 2, 3, these are the main changes that we see recently in Indian foreign policy, which are the 3 focus areas you would briefly point out?
The neighborhood first policy, the way India has helped the Sri Lanka, Maldives, Nepal, and Bangladesh and all the countries, that's extremely important. And then I extend it to our Act West policy towards the Middle East. So that is a reasonably good success overall if you put together. I recommend that instead of seeing our policy towards Asia in different silos like West, East, North, South, East, or neighborhood first, we should try to have a holistic Asia policy. And that is something that will be good. Number 2, it is also trying to becoming Atmanirbhar, self-reliant, with a global outlook and the global outreach to be part of the value supply chains. Towards it, it has already worked. Thirdly, it has tried to work very closely with different kind of groupings which are crisscrossing and cross-cutting various countries and regions.
And in the coming days, we will continue our discussions on India's foreign policies. With these comments, we bring today's discussion to an end. Thank you.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on Indian foreign policy, charting a new course under the Azadi ka Amrit Mahotsav series. The participants were Anil Kumar Tribhunath, former diplomat, and Simran Sodhi, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.